We share love. Embrace differences like hand in glove. Peace, joy for beautiful sight. Together we shine, bring each other light. And I stand in love's pure mind. Watching the world share love and light.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in and watching the world. We're here at noon. How's your day going so far? How the hell are you? Well, hopefully you guys are doing quite well. Last night we had such a good show, 40,000 people. We had none other than Calvin Johnson. You know what? I'm going to have to take my hat off to Calvin because he decided to do that show last night after telling me about his brother passing away, I believe the night before. How many men could have did that, right? What a tough moment. But he pushed through. He did a great job. It was even tough for me to even do the show with him because, as you guys know, my sister is battling cancer. In fact, I haven't really told you guys, my mother passed away at 47 from cancer. Tough journey. My brother was 15 years old, so we have a lot to deal with, but guess what? We rise to the occasion, we stand up, and we fight. Even though those feelings are there, we still have to deal with the emotions. And sometimes, as a man, you're not given that chance to be able to cry or say, you know what, I'm just going to go ball up in my bed and cry tonight. When the war comes, you expect the man to get out there and protect the family on the front line, come what may. At any rate, we have good news in regards to, and before I say that, I just want to give another condolences to Calvin. We thank him so much. If you get a chance, reach out to Calvin, give him some type of encouragement in this tough time. I'm pretty sure when you go through those tough moments, I did a lecture I'm going to be doing probably on the member section this week coming up. I'll do it tomorrow morning. Who rubs your scars? Have you ever had surgery and you have a scar from it? Who was the person that rubbed your scar? Well, obviously not right after your surgery, but through the healing process. A lot of times we need people to come and be at our aid, but for whatever reason, a lot of times we go through those moments alone. Now, I will say this before I start with the whole news, okay? Sometimes people, it's tough for others to come to your aid. Give you a case in point, my mother passed away at 47 from cancer. To see my sister go through it, it takes every fiber in my body to be able to assist her because I can't get my mother out of my mind. You see? So there's many different sides to this, but today I didn't mean to start preaching. But before I move on to the news, look at your neighbor and says, I'm going to always try to support those that I love despite how tough it may be. And I thank you guys for tuning into the channel. So that's enough of that. We're going to move on now and cover the news. Now, I will tell you guys, Hakeem Jeffries will be speaking. The Democrats want to talk about the whole shutdown. So I'm going to be monitoring that too. I also want to tell the moderators, if you guys don't mind, if you could check this out. Hakeem Jeffries is on Fox. In case I cannot catch it by conducting the show, if you guys see it, just alert me. You guys know how to text me, call me, or put it in the chat. But thank you guys for your understanding. I just wanted to get that off my chest when it comes to really being there to support people, and not just financially, but also just being a brother, being a sister, being a son, being a parent born in a time of need, right? That's very important. But all of these distractions we have in life, it makes it hard. But guess what, folks? We just have to sometimes dig deeper. And also, it comes from what we're putting into our minds. Sometimes it helps us to be in a better position to come to other people's aids. Also, when we're taking care of ourselves, I know I struggle to drink water and to eat properly, but these are the things that we really need to attend to so that we can be there for other people. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to get right into the news. We have so many great people here. I already see. We have Deborah. Deborah's in the building. Deborah. She likes when I say her name. JDP is in the building. Shout out to you, JDP. Eric is here. Okay,
Costs are
thank you
going up.
guys.
Childcare costs are
All
going up.
right.
Grocery
Okay,
costs are
so
going up.
there we go.
Electricity prices are through the roof.
It's going, guys.
And now,
Hakeem
because of the
Jeffries just I hear it
Republican
in the
refusal
background. Here we go.
to
So there you
extend
have it,
the
Hakeem.
Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of
Wow.
Americans
Look at there.
are about to experience
There you have it.
dramatically increased health care costs. In some cases, their health insurance premiums will increase by $1,000 or $2,000 per year. That is unacceptable. It will be unaffordable for working class
Okay, so this is live. This is the Democrats. Hakeem has just started. We're right at it.
to be able to go see a doctor when they need one. And so House Democrats and Senate Democrats have been fighting hard to address the Republican healthcare crisis and to lower the high cost of living for everyday Americans in the United States of America. Because the reality is, America is too expensive. And far too many people are struggling to live paycheck to paycheck. They can't thrive, they can barely survive. And that's why Democrats have been waging this fight. And we'll continue to wage this fight. No matter what comes over to us from the United States Senate to the House.
Guys, please hit the like button, share, and subscribe.
Our position as House Democrats has been crystal clear. We will sit down with any Republicans, anytime, any place, anywhere, in order to find a bipartisan path forward, but we're not down with their my way or the highway approach to governance. That's failed the American people. It's been a disaster for the American people, and the American people know it, which is why last Tuesday, Republicans all across the country got wiped out. One of the most decisive off-year elections ever in modern American history. And so as House Democrats, we know we're on the right side of this fight, the right side of the American people. And we're not going to support partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people. And we're going to continue the fight to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And if it doesn't happen this week, next week, this month, next month, then it's the fault of Donald Trump, House and Senate Republicans, who continue to make life more expensive for the American people. Questions?
Some Democrats in your own caucus are suggesting Schumer is an effective Senate Democratic leader and should be replaced. You, of course, are critical of this deal. Do you view him as effective and should he keep him?
Yes and yes.
Do you trust in this deal? There is language for President Trump and the Trump administration to reverse some of the firings that happened during the shutdown. Do you trust that the Trump administration and the president is going to sign off on that and reverse the people who have been fired?
We'll have to evaluate the legislative language, and we'll have a caucus meeting later on this afternoon, and we'll get a presentation from Rosa DeLauro, the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee. The overwhelming majority of Senate Democrats, led by Leader Schumer, are opposing this bill in the Senate. And they'll articulate, there are a variety of different reasons that the bill is being opposed strongly by Democrats in the Senate, the overwhelming majority of them. And there'll be a variety of different reasons that we articulate in the House. Now, certainly we're going to continue to stand by our hardworking federal employees. By the way, Donald Trump and Republicans, this toxic administration, they fired more than 2,000 federal and 100,000 federal employees prior to the shutdown that they started beginning. So, of course, there's reason to be deeply skeptical of the administration and their motives as it relates to the hardworking federal civil servants and the federal workforce. And we will continue to be deeply skeptical of their intentions. They spent the whole year implementing the toxic parts, the most toxic parts of Project 2025. After lying to the American people last year, saying they didn't know anything about Project 2025. And part of that has been going after the federal workforce. So we'll see what the language looks like, but it doesn't change the core problem here, which is we need to decisively address the Republican healthcare crisis on behalf of working class Americans, everyday Americans, and middle class Americans. Thanks. Third row.
So Dr. Oz said that millions.
Who?
Dr. Oz said there are millions of phantom enrollees under the ACA. Is that being looked at as it possibly makes it so that people that are on the ACA are paying more to inflating the number?
That's like the most random way to start a question on a serious topic. Nobody who's serious in this country takes Dr. Oz seriously. No one. And I mean, it's shocking that the guy even was confirmed. But this is part of the reality of Republicans here in the House and over in the Senate. They're nothing more than a rubber stamp for Donald Trump's cruelty and extreme agenda.
Are the phantom enrollees being addressed though?
I have no idea what Dr. Oz is talking about, and neither do the American people. Now, with respect to the Affordable Care Act, here's what I do know. That Republicans have tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act more than 70 different times in the last 15 years. They don't operate in good faith when it comes to the health care of the American people. And of course, as Democrats have repeatedly indicated, we're open to sitting down and having a bipartisan conversation about how to fix our broken healthcare system overall. But I'm not going to respond to any comments from randos like Dr. Oz, who is woefully unqualified to be in whatever position he holds in the administration. He's a joke. These people are jokes. But the issue of the healthcare of the American people is very serious. And that's what we'll continue to focus on. Back row.
Do you see in the Senate bill the extension of SNAP benefits rather than the possibility of January 1st for them? Do you see that as victory, or is that something that also raises questions?
Here's what I understand about the SNAP situation. Republicans this year, on July 3rd, subsequently signed into law by the current president, enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripping away health insurance from at least 14 million Americans, and at the same period of time, cut $186 billion from SNAP. Republicans did that this year. They literally ripped food from the mouths of hungry children, seniors, and veterans so they could reward their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks that they made permanent. That's what Republicans did. They've launched an all-out assault on SNAP. They've weaponized hunger and starvation here in America, taken SNAP benefits away from more than 1 million veterans rather than honoring them tomorrow, which is what should be taking place in the United States of America. Republicans have done that. And so these people can't be trusted on the cost of living issue. These Republican extremists, they can't be trusted on the healthcare issue. And they certainly cannot be trusted on the SNAP issue.
As you know, this has been the longest shutdown in American history. We've seen chaos at airports, delayed SNAP benefits, people losing their jobs. And yet, the deal that Democrats agreed to has been a deal that's been on the table for a while now. Still no policy outcome on healthcare. So what do the American people gain from the past
Our fight in the House of Representatives will continue to address the Republican healthcare crisis. We'll continue that fight today, tomorrow, this week, this month, next month, this year, next year. We're going to continue that fight to fix our broken healthcare system and lower the high cost of living for the American people. And the American people know that we're on the right side of this fight. It's part of the reason why you saw decisive Democratic victories last Tuesday and crushing Republican losses all across America. In Virginia, in New Jersey, in New York, in Pennsylvania, in California, in Mississippi, in Georgia, across the country, up and down the ballot. Because Republican policies have failed the American people. And as Democrats, we're going to continue to fight to make their life better. Thanks.
Throughout the shutdown, you referred to your Senate colleagues as courageous for rejecting the 14 previous attempts to reopen the government without an extension to the Affordable Tax Care credits. Those 8 Senate Democrats who voted to start the process of reopening the government, do you still include them in that characterization of courageous Democrats who have kept the fight going throughout this shutdown?
Well, I don't have much to say about those individuals, and they're going to have to explain themselves to their constituents and to the American people. I certainly believe that Senate Democrats, the overwhelming majority of Senate Democrats, led by Chuck Schumer, have waged a valiant fight over the last 7 weeks, defeating the partisan Republican spending bill 14 or 15 different times, week after week after week, and continue to oppose this effort of passing legislation that does not address the Republican healthcare crisis by extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. But the fight is getting ready to shift back to the House, where we're going to work hard, hold the Republicans accountable. All of these loudmouths on the House Republican conference side who's been saying for the last several weeks that we have to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Now is their chance. This week, they have to come back from their 7-week prolonged taxpayer-funded Republican vacation. They can no longer hide. They can no longer hide. Mike Johnson apparently still hiding, refused to even answer a single question today. That's extraordinary. But they're not going to be able to hide this week when they return from their vacation. Thanks.
Speaking of the House, Speaker Johnson has not committed to holding a vote on subsidies, even though the Senate agreement would have them do so. What do you say to that? And then also, what do you think that would do to the relationship between Republicans and Democrats on the House side?
Well, the failure of Republicans to address the healthcare crisis that they've created in the House and in the Senate is no surprise, because House and Senate Republicans multiple times this year have been given an opportunity to vote to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, and multiple times this year already, in the context of the debate around their one big ugly bill, they voted against, unanimously voted against extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. So over the last several weeks, it's become increasingly difficult for them to hide from their position as it relates to the health care of the American people. And House Democrats, joined by our colleagues in the Senate, we're not going to stop the fight. We're going to continue to lean into the fight over the next few days and beyond until we actually get an outcome that makes life better for working class Americans.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. There's already extensive backlash coming from the Democratic base over feeling shortchanged by Senate Democrats who secured this deal without touching on healthcare. What do you think that this backlash can mean for the party going into the midterms next year, and also for the voters who just handed Democrats a decisive victory? Do you think that this will make them feel also shortchanged, disenfranchised, demoralized? Do you think that this will lead to a switch up?
House Democrats are going to take back control of the House of Representatives next year. I've said it before, and if I said it, I meant it. Now, with respect to the senators on the other side of the Capitol, they're going to have to explain themselves. But the overwhelming majority of Senate Democrats continue to remain in the arena fighting to fix our broken healthcare system and address the Republican healthcare crisis. This fight for us is not partisan. It's not a partisan fight. It's a patriotic fight. We're waging this fight on behalf of the American people. The 5 states that are most impacted by a failure to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits are West Virginia, Wyoming, Alaska, Mississippi, and Tennessee. 45% of the people, of the Americans who are going to lose health care or be at risk of losing health care if they don't, on the other side of the aisle, extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, 45% of them are registered Republicans. 35% registered Democrats, and 20% unaffiliated or independent. This is not a partisan fight for us. It's a patriotic fight. You know, one of the people that I met early on during this Trump Republican shutdown, came to Capitol Hill, was a 29-year-old named Mariah Plant. She's from rural Wyoming County in West Virginia. Her older brother is nonverbal, autistic, and requires 24-hour care. And Mariah is able to provide that care to her older brother lovingly and affectionately because of Medicaid that Republicans have now cut by the largest amount in American history. Her hospital in rural West Virginia is at risk of closing because of Republican policies in their one big ugly bill. And at the same time, this 29-year-old loving caregiver for her older brother gets her health care from the Affordable Care Act. And it's affordable because of the tax credits that Republicans now want to rip away from her. And so I'm fighting for people like Mariah Plant. Very different than the people that I represent in Brooklyn, New York. But she's an American, just like I represent hundreds of thousands of Americans. And that's what House Democrats are doing. We're fighting for the American people.
Thank you, Leader Jeffries. Have you spoken to your Democratic colleagues in the Senate who voted to reopen the government? And if so, what do you make of the argument that Republicans would not discuss healthcare during the shutdown, so they said there's no choice but to vote no?
I have not spoken to them. Thanks.
Different topic, Mr. Leader, if you don't mind. President Trump announcing widespread pardons for the group of people that were involved in providing alternate electors, as they called it, for the 2020 election. And he also has allegedly received a commutation request from Ghislaine Maxwell. Just wondering about your thoughts about the way the president has handled his pardon power, especially given how critical he was for the fight.
Well, Donald Trump, in terms of the exercise of his pardon power and commutations, is completely and totally out of control. Like, he can find the time to pardon a serial fraudster like George Santos, but can't find any time to sit down with Democrats on Capitol Hill who represent half the country in order to address the healthcare crisis that Republicans have created. That's devastating people in urban America, rural America, working class America, small town America, the heartland of America, and Black and brown communities throughout America. And so what we're seeing with these toxic pardons and commutations coming from Donald Trump is more of the same. And look, the American people know these extremists on the Republican side have gone. What about it is that they went too far on day one of Donald Trump's presidency.
Guys, tap the like button, the thumbs up. Thanks.
On day one of Donald Trump's presidency, this guy pardons hundreds of violent felons who brutally beat police officers, 140 of whom were seriously injured, life-threatening injuries in many cases, and then unleash these people on communities all across the country in ways that put those communities at risk. And what we've seen from Donald Trump since day one, since those toxic pardons of those violent individuals, is more of the same. From a person who promised to lower costs on day one, but doesn't give a damn about the American people. And what has taken place over the last 41 days is that the American people have seen Democrats fight for them, fight to make life better for them, fight to drive down the high cost of living for everyday Americans, and fix our broken healthcare system in the face of this overwhelming Republican assault on the healthcare of everyday Americans. And Republicans continue to stand up for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected.
Thank you, Leader. Whether fair or unfair, Leader Schumer is taking a lot of heat from members of your own party. Why do you think he's the right leader for this moment? Why do you think he should stay leader of Senate Democrats?
Yeah, as I've indicated, listen, Leader Schumer and Senate Democrats over the last 7 weeks have waged a valiant fight on behalf of the American people. And I'm not going to explain what a handful of Senate Democrats have decided to do. That's their explanation to offer to the American people. What we're going to continue to do as House Democrats, partner with our allies throughout America, is to wage the fight to stay in the Coliseum, to win victories in the arena on behalf of the American people, notwithstanding whatever disappointments may arise. That's the reality of life. That's certainly the reality of this place. But we're in this fight for all the right reasons, because the extremism that has been unleashed on the American people is completely and totally out of control. Life hasn't gotten better for everyday Americans under Donald Trump and compliant Republicans. It's gotten worse. And the American people know it. And we've got to continue to stay in this fight until we end this national nightmare. And that's our commitment to the American people. We're in this fight until we end this national nightmare and can get back to a place where we continue America's long, necessary, and majestic march toward a more perfect union. Thank you.
Okay, so there you have it, folks. We have some insight from Hakeem Jeffries. What do you guys think? Do you guys believe him? Do you feel confident about the future based on what the Democrats are doing, especially Hakeem Jeffries? JDP says it wasn't any better under Biden. Okay, Lori Parks says MAGA supporters are all in the food pantry lining, taking them all over. Okay. Thank you for that insight as well. I saw a video about that the other day. In fact, I saw one guy said his own sister came to him for some assistance, and he refused to help his sister because she had voted for Donald Trump. He told her, basically, you voted for this, you have to stand the heat, you have to stand the rain. There's a debate going on in the chat about slavery, and that Barack Obama said that the Bible said that slavery was okay. Is that what he said? There seems to be a big debate about this. I can give you a little insight. I'll speak on it just from what the Bible says. In Deuteronomy, it says that if you have a slave, you could beat your slave to the point of near death, and there was no punishment as long as he didn't die. So that's in Deuteronomy. You can check it out if you want to see it. The Apostle Paul I think it was, I won't quote the book, but basically he says, you want to make sure you're following your master. So he used some of that type of terminology. Also, there's guidelines within the Torah when it breaks down when war. It says that a woman's family could be wiped out, but if she was attractive, she could be taken as a slave, pretty much, for 30 days. Her hair would have to be shaved off, and then her slave master could actually sleep with her. So that gets into another shady area. But that's this is what the debate is about. I'm just giving you a little insight. This is the type of conversation I have every day. I do a lot of debates, and I also deal with a lot of Bible scholars. So this is right up my alley. So, but I won't get into that. We're going to stick to the news. But the Bible does give the guidelines for slavery, especially if you go to the book of Deuteronomy. So if you want to get into that deeper, I can go there. Just let me know. All right, so let's go into the Supreme Court and their take on same-sex marriages. Let's see what was the final verdict.
Right, we've got this breaking news for you. The Supreme Court has rejected a call to overturn its landmark decision that legalized same-sex marriage on the federal level. Now, you're looking at Kim Davis. The appeal was...
Okay, let me pause for a second because a lot of people are responding to what I'm saying. Okay, AI says the Bible loves slavery. Okay. House says this is the second time the Democrats have shut down the country, twice under the Trump, just to hurt him and the American people. Okay, thank you for that expression. KC Durella says slave master, what the F? Okay. Yes, indeed. Those terms are actually used by the Apostle Paul. And I think even Jesus says that if your master asks you to go 1 mile, he says go 2. So there's a lot of language when it comes to that. I'm just expounding on it because there's a conversation in the comments. Sage King 603 says, best your mama joke. Okay, must be a troll. Okay. All right, let's see. Lori Park says the original Constitution no longer exists. They just haven't announced it yet. I'm waiting on the new one to be posted. I think they're going to write one too. Thank you. That's a good point, Lori. Lori, welcome back. Nice to have you here. All right. Okay. So, yeah. Okay. Kyle says, was Deuteronomy written 2,000 years ago? How stupid is that? No, the Gospels from Matthew to, and this is a news show. I don't want to get too deeply into it. I'm going to turn Patreon into strictly Bible. I'm going to bring on a lot of Bible scholars. I've also interviewed a lot of Bible scholars. That's all just going to be on Patreon because I don't want to get it too complicated on this channel. But anyway, from Matthew to Revelation, that's written roughly 2,000 years ago until, maybe within 300 to 400 years. Deuteronomy is written much earlier. Okay, that's the Torah, part of the Torah. All right, thank you guys for that. Let's get back to, okay, if there are any other comments here. Anti says people who think Dems are trying to hurt Trump don't realize how much Trump is hurting them and the country. A lot of people feel that way. Thank you for your comments. A Death, thank you for your comments. Says my middle name is Matthew, and thank you for some of your highlights. I did note what you're saying. Cliff Presents says he's a bad man boss. Second Hezekiah 2:34. Okay, thank you. Actually print out the scripture so people can actually read it. Laura Park says Trump walks with Lucifer. Okay, thank you. Jack says Deuteronomy is said to be written by Moses. Well, that's true. Many people feel Moses wrote it, but when you actually go back and you break it down, you'll see that it could not have been written within the timeline of Moses. But again, I'll get to that on Patreon. Def says, yeah, I figured out when I was talking about the Giants. Yeah, Cowboys forever. Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Let's get to this whole storyline here.
Based on something she filed. She's the former Kentucky court clerk who refused to issue marriage licenses after the 2015 Supreme Court ruling. And she wanted a lower court's ruling overturned that is currently requiring her to pay $360,000 in damages and attorney fees to a couple who was denied a marriage license. So that new.
So here's my question to you guys. Can you work in the public, right? You work at the county clerk's office or what have you, and you have your own beliefs, right? We're talking about religion, ironically, right? Someone comes in, they want to have a same-sex marriage, but because you adhere to the Bible, you says, oh no, I refuse to marry these individuals. Can you take that stance and actually work there? And that's what really had this woman fall into a lot of hot water. So, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that's okay? Gorilla God King says they're not overturning same sex marriages. You can't use the GAY word on YouTube or they'll censor the channel. So, let's use the term same sex marriage. Yeah. Okay, Cheryl says she should quit her job. Okay, all right. Thank you for that insight. Def says separate. Anti says do your job or get sued. That's a lot of money she was sued for. One Love is back in the building. Says public job isn't a place for personal ethics. Exactly. I think so. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Mashona says, did you remember to hit the and tap the like button and also the hearts? Hit the hearts, folks. Down in your right-hand corner, you can hit the hearts, and we'll see you hitting the hearts. Every time you hit a heart, the heart flies high. It's a beautiful situation. It also helps promote the channel. Gorilla is apologizing for something, not sure what for. Cheryl Person says, same-sex marriage. Okay, haha, I'm not sure the context. Bad Mojo says, what the F would they say? It's not Saudi Arabia. Okay, all right. And then, okay, so Cheryl is posting that word more and more. Okay, that's not a good indication of support for what I said, but we'll just have to see how that develops. But trying to use same sex instead of using GAY to adhere with YouTube policy. We want to keep this going. All right, so let's move on. We covered this. I was so intrigued by this story. I wanted to see how it was going to turn out. So now we know. All right, let's see how Donald Trump economy is doing. Do you know? Let's look at the numbers.
President Trump doubling down on the economy, now claiming that there is virtually no inflation, and most recently also saying quotes like this: I don't want to hear about the affordability, claiming that Democrats are making up numbers. But the big question is, no matter what they're saying, how do Americans feel about the economy right now and the impact on the impact of rising prices, where inflation is, paying their bills, being able to buy food at the grocery store? Harry Enton is taking a look and running the numbers on all of this. Politicians can say politician things,
Yes.
but where are things with the economy right now and how people are feeling about it?
Yeah, what President Trump is trying to sell the American folks are
Tell us in the comments if you think the economy is going well. Give us your position. We have a lot of Republicans here, Democrats here. Tell us what you think and also hit the like button. Thank you.
aren't buying, and we can see it pretty simply here. Take a look here. This is consumer sentiment, the current conditions. Consumer sentiment could be the current conditions or it can be future expectations. We're looking at current conditions. And get this, according to the University of Michigan, we are dealing with the worst ever view of current conditions dating all the way back since 1951. This is record-breaking in the way you don't want to be breaking records. And get this, Kate, it is down 30%. Consumer sentiment of current conditions down 30%.
Wow, we have the worst, right? That's not a good reflection on Donald Trump, according to their numbers. Human says Democrats bent the knee. Okay, I've been seeing that a lot in the media. Daniel says people need to worry about their needs and not wants. Okay, Lori says that's her job position, which was she was being paid for that position. She's not being paid for a personal view. If she wanted to take it personally, and the chat is moving so fast, I didn't see. She should have quit her job. Okay, Mitchell says horrible. Our dollar has no value. Preach on, Mitchell. Nice to have you here. Anti says they forget he has issues counting and reading and making excuses for him. Okay, the Trump loyalists. Okay, Johnny EO says 1% of the population thinks the economy is going well. The top 100%. Well, and if they're billionaires in New York, Mom Donnie is going to push those taxes right on their head. Okay, Def says I've seen prices lowering, but currently looking for a job. I feel like I'm being punished for voting Trump. Oh my, sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that. Okay, Promo says, yeah, they did. Okay, Melissa says the orange diaper is the worst president ever. Well, that's what they're trying to show here with the numbers. They're saying that the economy is tanking. I also posted on my Facebook and TikTok and YouTube, I think the housing market is down. The lowest it's been in 30 years. Can you imagine that? GMA says, sorry, but the numbers that CNN puts out are worthless, just like CNN. Okay. If you send me better numbers, I'll definitely present it just so we can stay balanced. I appreciate that. Watching the world with two O's. I'll have the moderators put it in the chat so we can contest it. If you have more updated information, send it my way. I'm not afraid of the truth. That's what we look for. All right. Def says jobs around me all seem very liberal, and I'm straight white, so I'm basically bottom of the list. Oh wow. One Love says the economy is going the way it's supposed to go. It's only been 10 months. Take way longer to correct Biden's bad decisions. Okay, thank you. Let's get back to it.
From January when Donald Trump took office, no bueno.
That is
Yeah.
significant and something you can't ignore. You
No.
shouldn't ignore.
No, you should
would
not.
ignore to your peril. But they do not feel good about the economy. How much are they blaming this on President Trump?
Yeah, it would be one thing that President Trump could ignore it if folks weren't blaming him for it. But take a look here. Trump's policies have worsened economic conditions in America. Look at this. We're dealing with a super majority here. We're talking about more than 3 in 5 Americans, 61%, who say that Trump's policies have worsened economic conditions in America. How about worsened your own finances? Again, we're dealing with a majority here. 51% of Americans say that Trump's policies have worsened your own finances. This is double trouble for the president of the United States.
Do you guys think this is going to show up in the midterm elections and cause people to go in the direction of the Democrats because of the numbers?
When you're dealing with consumer sentiment of current conditions being record-breaking in the wrong ways, being record-breaking for the worst ever since 1951, and you're dealing with a supermajority who say that your policies have worsened economic conditions in America, and you're dealing with a majority who say your policies have worsened the folks' own finances, that is, ay caramba, no good.
Yeah, no matter what, you would prefer to not have this. be
No,
what
you would
you're
prefer
looking
not
at.
to, Kate.
Ivan Curry says Trump keeps winning. Okay. Orlando says yes. Anti says death has its own issues. He failed when he was born with an automatic cheat heritage. Okay. All right. Mashona says yes, but unfortunately, I don't think whether side is working for the people. Okay. And let's see here. Francisco says Schumer destroyed the economy in 40 days, not Trump. Okay, thank you. One Love says coming from CNN, Communist News Network. It's fake news. Okay, show us something else. Show us something better. If you have it, put the numbers up and we'll present it.
What about the slice of the electorate both parties need and is what decides elections? Independence.
Yeah, okay. And oftentimes we talk about independence, and sometimes that group of voters includes folks who lean either the Republican or Democratic side. I decide to look at pure independents,
Okay.
those who don't lean towards either side. And look at this, disapprove of Trump on the economy among pure independents. We're talking about 4 in 5. 4 in 5, 79%. I'm laughing because you rarely ever see a number this high. 79% of pure independents
Not good, right?
disapprove of Trump on the economy. How about this? This is no outlier, Kate. This is no outlier because look at Marquette University, their law school. 76% of pure independents disapprove of Trump on the economy. When you put it all together with the approval ratings, it averages out to a net approval rating on the economy among pure independents of, get this, minus 58 points. Oy vey, as my mother used to say. This is the type of thing that is political nightmare fuel, and it is no wonder that a little bit less than
Okay, so it's not looking good according to CNN numbers. This is just their take. This is out today, so let's keep moving. Donald Trump has put out that there has been illegal payments made in regards to Medicaid. Let's check it out. Let's see what's going on.
Reopening the government overnight, voting 60-40 to break the filibuster and advance a spending measure. A final package vote set for the coming days, and if the bill clears the Senate, it will move to the House, where Once it's passed, we'll move on to the president's desk for signage. And then the government can officially reopen probably by the end of this week. GOP leaders are now promising a December vote on extending enhanced Obamacare subsidies.
Okay, so we have Fox News up now. Go ahead and post if you think it's fake news. Everybody was saying CNN, CNN. Let's see if anybody taking the shots at Fox.
Which have been the Democrats' main sticking point in this record-long standoff, 41 days. Open enrollment is currently underway. Americans have until December 15th to enroll for health coverage beginning New Year's Day. Joining me now is Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator, Dr. Mehmet Oz. Dr. Oz, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
I always love spending time with you, Maria.
Well, this is a long-fought fight. I want to talk to you about everything you just did in the Oval Office the other day with the GLP-1 drugs and how President Trump and you and your agenda are making things more accessible for people at lower prices. But first, give us your reaction to the government likely reopening this week and what was achieved last night.
I'm over the moon, happy that we're going to get.
Okay, so Lori says this reporter is not lying about the approval of ratings. Okay, thank you. AI says CNN and Fox News are fake news. So, okay, both should be thrown out. Damn Entertainment says Fox is fake news. Okay, so whatever I post as far as the news, there's always going to be someone that's not too happy with it. Sean R says, if ACA is affordable, why does it require subsidies? Okay, thank you guys.
Get the government open, get all these federal workers back into their offices. For me, it means I've got actuaries and insurance experts that can help crunch the numbers and figure out what makes sense. It's also the right thing for the American people. You should not be negotiating important issues, in this case, the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid, under an extortionary situation where you're holding the government hostage. So opening the government up, allowing everyone to go back to work, getting air traffic control and all the other things you've been talking about, for me, a focus on healthcare is important. And you brought up this issue of a potential vote for on the ACA.
Does it feel weird to you guys hearing Dr. Oz, especially if you ever watched the show before, actually advising us on governmental issues?
The whole debate for Republicans is about fraud, waste, and abuse. During COVID, there were these enhanced, very generous subsidies given because it was an emergency to Americans who are in that category of
Yaya says dump Trump and MAGA.
1 to 400% of the poverty level. They even gave it to folks who are making more than 4 times the poverty level because they wanted to be generous. It was COVID. It was a pandemic. The pandemic's over. We're not at war with the virus anymore. So Republicans are arguing all the shortcuts that were created.
Okay, Sean R says Dr. Oz is not even a registered practitioner. Wow. Lori Park says Oz could never ever be my physician. Okay, AI says nope, he has been on the payroll. One Love says Oz is a joke. Okay, thank you guys for expressing it.
Over the last several years, that led to fraud, waste, and abuse at massive numbers need to be reformed. And I'll give you just 2 numbers that listeners ought to be aware of. Half the 24 million people on Obamacare don't use the insurance. Now, if you buy insurance with your hard-earned dollars, you're going to probably use it for a prescription, a doctor's visit, no use. We believe half of those people, 6 million, literally don't know they have insurance, don't care that they have insurance. They're phantom enrollees. So that means the taxpayer is paying for insurance on.
Damn Entertainment says, yes, it's weird that Oz is explaining about this. I agree with you. Def says, how can making America great be bad? Okay, Yaya says, Bordeaux thanks a million. Okay, One Love says Oz is a joke.
For example, Medicaid and paying for you to have an Obamacare policy. Full freight. The insurance companies are happy with that. No one seems to mind, except, of course, the taxpayers who have to foot the bill twice. So these are the kinds of things you've got to clean up in order to.
Now, where are all the people that were complaining about CNN? I want to see what you have to say about Fox News. I haven't seen anybody say anything about Fox being fake. Deborah says he's a hot doctor on the show. I watch the shows. Okay, all right. I know he has a lot of watchers. AI says Raspberry Keystone seen on diet by Dr. Oz. LOL. Biggest scam. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Okay, let's try to finish up a little bit more of this.
Get the ACA into a different place for next year. But meanwhile, open enrollment, as you said, is progressing. No hitches at all. Folks are signing up. Most people have very generous policies. And here's the basic number. The average person on Obamacare pays $50 a month for their insurance now. It used to be $37 this year, which means you're paying $13 more next year than this year. And that's the reason we shut the government down for 6 weeks, according to the Democrats.
I mean, there's also fraud, which was uncovered. I mean, you were able to uncover more than $1 billion in Medicaid money being spent on illegal immigrants.
Just found it out last week. The president was asking, the Democrats said it wasn't a problem. They wanted to repeal the one big beautiful bill. So we decided, trust but verify. So we audited the books of 6 states. We only have a few months of data from only a few of those states. We already have over $1 billion that we've identified of monies that were spent from, again, federal taxpayer dollars spent on illegal immigrants. And here's the catch. If you're in California and you want to give Medicaid to illegal immigrants in California, maybe that's your choice. We can debate that later. But you can't take money from taxpayers in Texas and Florida and pay for your illegal immigrants, because they're not doing that in Texas or Florida. And that's what's been tolerated for far too long. It undermines the system. And my job is to protect our most.
So do you guys think illegal immigrants should receive benefits from the government? Tell us what you think personally.
Vulnerable. I'm laser focused and I'm a heart surgeon. So, my day job is taking care of people who are struggling with health issues. I want to make sure they have coverage. But if you dilute the coverage that we've dedicated to folks on Medicaid or to the ACA to people.
Okay. Anti says, let's see if I can find it. It says those who think Fox Entertainment is real news need to learn critical thinking. Okay. Melissa says Oz is trash. He's like the orange diaper they were on TV and think they know how to run the government. Okay. James Irvin says 1% issues. Okay. One Love says no. Okay. Very good. Lori Park says Fox propaganda, racist, fake news. Sean R says illegals get nothing but deported. End of story. Okay. No debate about it. James says they don't receive benefits. Okay. All right. Okay. So we're going to move on. From this, let's cover a different story. Let's see a little bit about what Mike Johnson has to say about the opening of the government.
As that is. I don't think it's coincidental, you know how I think, but it's after 40 days of wandering in the wilderness and making the American people suffer needlessly. Some Senate Democrats finally have stepped forward to end the pain. It appears to us this morning that our long national nightmare is finally coming to an end, and we're grateful for that. At least some Democrats now finally appear ready to do what Republicans.
Do you guys see Mike Johnson as being a hero here? He seems like he's awfully happy about the outcome. Maybe he takes the credit for it.
And President Trump and millions of hardworking American people have been asking them to do for weeks. As we said from the beginning, the people's government cannot be held hostage to further anyone's political agenda. That was never right. And shutting down the government never produces anything. It never has, if you study history. And so here we are. I want to remind everybody this morning of another critical point that you've heard me here repeat over and over the last several weeks.
Damn Entertainment says Mike Johnson is the enemy. James Irwin says we will remember their names next election cycle. I think so. And I think during the midterm elections, we're going to see some amazing things happen. I can just imagine.
It's something that I and Leader John Thune and President Trump and every Republican leader have all said repeatedly from the beginning. We have always been open to finding solutions to reduce the oppressive costs of healthcare under the Unaffordable Care Act. We just made clear that we would not and should not ever do that. That is, negotiate as hostages. And I've also reminded you here every morning at this press conference throughout the shutdown, Republicans have not just been talking about reducing costs and fraud and abuse in so many areas and in healthcare. We've been actually passing new laws to accomplish that urgent mission for the people, and we will.
Sean R. says America will remember that Dems voted to close the government and withhold SNAP. Okay, thank you very much. Deborah says to be done fair and correct, a case-by-case basis. There are not all bad people. Some restaurants employ. Okay, Brian is here. Thanks for all the continued support, Brian. Brian says, wandering in the wilderness in the book of Job, was Satan going from here to there? Okay. That's what the Democrats did with this country. Thank you for that. Melissa says Mike Johnson is not the hero here. He's trash just like the whole government. Oh, wow, good point. Okay. One Love says if their lips are moving, they are lying. Okay. Deborah says like the video and help Mel's algorithm. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being conscious of that. Thank you.
Continue to do so. So here's where we are by way of schedule, just so you know, you're following. And if you're not at home, if you're waking up to this good news this morning, the Senate's vote late last night of 60 to 40 opens the door now. The Senate is moving forward on an amended House CR, a continuing resolution, that will reopen the government until January 30th. Added to that are provisions to fully fund SNAP provisions through the end of the next fiscal year, which is September 2026. Guaranteed back pay for all federal workers who have been made to endure these hardships over the last several weeks. And it also includes passage of 3 appropriations bills, which we're grateful to be moving through the process. That is the Military Construction Veterans Affairs bill, it's the Agriculture bill, and the Legislative Branch bill. The Senate will be back in session this morning to finish their job, and we're certainly praying that they do. They'll need unanimous consent from all senators to fast track their final vote. As you know, there's some procedural hurdles that one or more could throw in the way, but we certainly hope that they won't do that because so many people across this country are desperate for the government to reopen. At the very moment that they do that final vote, I will call all House members to return to Washington as quickly as possible. We'll give a 36-hour formal and official notice so that we can vote as soon as possible.
I wonder will they bring up Epstein too while they're at it, right?
To pass the amended CR bill and get it to the president's desk. As you all know, and he said as recently as last night, I was with him, and he told the press, he said, we want to get the government open. He's very anxious to get the government reopened and to end the Schumer shutdown. We all are. With regard to the travel challenges, I spoke yesterday at some length with Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, my former colleague and good friend, and he lamented the serious situation that we have with air travel in the U.S. He's bent over backwards, as all members of the administration and the cabinet have done in all of their areas of jurisdiction, to try to keep the government working for the people and to mitigate the pain and the harm. But the problem we have with air travel is that our air traffic controllers are overworked. And
well, Wednesday I'll be in the friendly skies. Hopefully they have it resolved by then, but I'm not so hopeful. Beach Roasted said, my grandfather was 26 when he married my grandmother, and she was 14. He was a war hero who fought in World War II. That's when the country was greatest. Trump is going to end woke age of consent. Okay, Sean R. says, Lori, name just one lie he has told with any facts to back up your claim. Okay, so you guys are having a debate there. Beach Roasted said Trump 2028, roll back the voting laws from the 60s and end age of consent. Okay, thank you.
Unpaid, and many of them have called in sick. That's a very stressful job and even more stressful exponentially when they're having trouble providing for their families. And so air travel has been grinding to a halt in many places. And as of Sunday, nearly half of all domestic flights and U.S. flights were either canceled or delayed. And it's a very serious situation. So I'm saying that by way of reminder. I'm stating the obvious to all my colleagues, Republicans and Democrats in the House. You need to begin right now returning to the Hill. We have to do this as quickly as possible. Now, we look forward to the government reopening this week so Congress can get back to our regular legislative session. We have a lot of business to do, as you all know, and we will be working in earnest.
Some of that business is still to vote on the Epstein files, so hopefully we'll get to the bottom of that. We'll learn more about that. Now, Donald Trump pardons Rudy Giuliani and others involved with the election. Let's check it out.
It was overnight from Washington, where President Trump apparently has pardoned dozens of former aides, attorneys, and others who were involved in the effort to overturn the 2020 election results. The list includes former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Nancy Cortez is at the White House. Nancy, good morning.
Nate, good morning to you. This is the new list of pardons, 77 people. It was posted late last night by Ed Martin, the Justice Department's pardon attorney, on his personal X account.
And still no Sean Diddy Combs on the list, right?
And among those receiving a quote, full, complete, and unconditional pardon are some well known names, people who served as President Trump's attorneys during the first term, including, as you mentioned, the former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Jenna Ellis, John Eastman, along with Trump's advisor, longtime advisor Boris Epstein, and his former chief of staff Mark Meadows. They are on the list too. Now, some of these individuals were involved in conversations about pressuring state legislatures or about submitting alternate slates of electors after former President Joe Biden defeated Trump in the 2020 election. This document appears to have been signed by the president on Friday. It says, quote, "This proclamation ends a grave national injustice perpetrated upon the American people following the 2020 presidential election and continues the process of national reconciliation." A few people on this list did plead guilty to state charges in Georgia a couple of years ago, but they've never faced.
So it looks like if you're rolling with Donald Trump, you're on a potentially winning team because he tends to look out for those on his team. Okay. All right. So we're going to check out the last video in regards to the shutdown. We're going to understand how the Democrats played a part in it.
Washington with the latest on when we can expect this shutdown to officially end. Maddie, good morning.
Good morning, Todd. Well, the vote the Senate took overnight is the first step in a series of procedural maneuvers. And of course, the House will have to.
Eli noticed that too. Trump won in 2020. So it's pretty interesting how they set that up. Maybe they made a mistake. I'm not too sure. Brian Cantrell says California Newsom state burned down for lack of water. Okay. One Love says, sorry, no dark matter pardons, LOL. Eli says the numbers never lie. Okay, James Irwin says, under Trump, it doesn't matter what they do. He's going to pardon them all. Okay. Damn Entertainment says, criminal roll call of pardons. This is America. I think Biden, his last minute pardons, they say were done by the automatic pen. So he's taking a lot of heat from this administration about those. And I think in some cases, some have been overturned potentially for some commutations. Brian Cantrell says, great mention, Mel. Okay, thank you. Appreciate your support. Sean R. says, James Irwin, just like Biden's 4,000 plus auto pen pardons, clouding his close family and even his children. Okay. One Love says, felons only pardon. Okay. Anti says, MAGA morons and gullible airheads or a-holes when the call the accused PDFs a king, the cultist behavior. Okay, they're not going to be happy to hear that. That's for sure. Mashona says, did you remember to hit and tap the heart button and also to like, guys? Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to hear the news consistently.
Vote on the package too. So it will take a few more days before the government reopens. But Sunday's vote was the first clear sign that a bipartisan deal had been reached after a roughly 40-day stalemate. The Senate voted 60-40 to back a revamped GOP funding bill that would keep the government open until the end of January. 8 Democrats joined Republicans to pass the bill, including Senate Minority Whip Dick Durbin.
All right, so here are the 8 people that they said caved in to the pressure of Donald Trump. That's what they're saying, especially when you look at the headlines throughout. Joe Vargas says Donald Trump stopped Americans from being fed. He asked the Supreme Court to stop SNAP payments to Americans sending billions to other countries, but not to help others. On Thursday, when the judge in Rhode Island issued that Donald Trump would have to release those SNAP payments by Friday, did not mention the Democrats. The judge mentioned that it would be Donald Trump and his administration. So that's something to think about. John Stevenson says, I was only hoping that they would get with the show and open up the government immediately. Okay, Sean R. says the only sensible Democrats. Well, the damage has been done in many respects. A lot of the government workers didn't receive their money for 40 days. That's a long time to go without a check. And look at all the things that compiled and backed up on them in the interim. In fact, a lot of them had to go out and take out loans, more debt, just to pay household bills. What's going on, folks? And you know what? Throughout all of it, I did see people say, hey, this is something we have to go through in order to correct the country. I heard that and I saw it. I read it so much. Def says, well, the feds make money. JDP says, like, share, and subscribe, and turn on your notifications to be notified of upcoming shows. Okay. All right. Anti says, really? No surprise a felon would support a felon. Okay. Lori Park says, wasn't surprised about Fetterman, was surprised about Tim Kaine. Okay. All right. Thank you for your inner thought there. Thank you.
Senators Tim Kaine, Catherine Cortez Masto, and Jackie Rosen, among others.
This is the beginning to show and fight for Americans across the country. Let me just say this, with the government open, we can focus on passing a full bipartisan budget for 2026.
I understand that not all of my Democratic colleagues are satisfied with this agreement, but waiting another week or another month wouldn't deliver a better outcome. So let me be clear. No one in the Senate chamber wants to extend the ACA tax credits more than I do.
I joined this group to make sure that we could get important protections for federal employees. And what we have in this bill is the restoration of all the furloughed employees and a guarantee of their back pay.
So despite them touting what they
He reminds me of the guy from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, right?
did get, these Dems are facing criticism from their party because the package does not include a deal on Obamacare subsidies. It only includes a guarantee on a vote for the tax credits, far from what progressives and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer had pushed for.
Tonight, 8 Democrats voted with the Republicans to allow them to go forward on this.
Do we have any Bernie Sanders fans in the building? Any diehard Bernie Sanders? What do you think?
Continuing resolution. And to my mind, this was a very, very bad vote. We got a lot of work to do. But to be honest with you, tonight was not a good night.
Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna is already targeting Schumer, saying Senator Schumer is no longer.
I think when it comes to optics, I think they own the shutdown with the vote last night. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm just saying it kind of made it seem like, well, why didn't they do it a long time ago? So I think Bernie makes a solid point.
Longer effective and should be replaced if you can't lead the fight to stop healthcare premiums from skyrocketing for.
Oh my goodness. Def says, I don't think Bernie is even alive anymore. That is crazy to me. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's go through a few of the comments. We get the gist of the video. So let's move on. We're going to close this out. But in doing so, I'm going to go through a few of these items. Okay. Brian Cantrell says Bernie does not care for nothing. Okay. One Love says under President Obama, United States provided, and I lost the comment, provided Israel with over $23.5 billion in foreign military financing. Okay. From 2009 to 2016, a total of $48 billion was promised. Okay. We talked about that last night, how many people feel like Israel runs America to a certain extent. You're starting to see Tucker Carlson and also Candace Owens. They're having these conversations about Israel, but that's a subject you have to tread lightly about, or else you could get big trouble on social media, especially YouTube. So have to be careful talking about Israel or even mentioning the word Jews. It opens up a whole different can of worms. Sean R. says, James Irvin, it's okay, they were promised funding and opening the government, common sense ideals. Okay, John Stevenson, John is in the building, says if most of the Democrats had their way, the shutdown would definitely continue, and Bernie's who's it's bad for. Okay, Lori Park says PBS, Mr. Roger would be upset with what Trump is doing to PBS. Thank you. That was a great show back in the day. Probably tells our age, right? We Got a Fish says he's another one that needs to go. So damn old. He's like not hip to anything that's going on these days. I'm tired of 60 freaking policies. Okay. Again, JDP says like, share, and subscribe, and turn on your notifications to be notified of upcoming shows. All right. So let's do a last run here on comments. See if anybody has anything else they want to share. Okay, it looks like everybody has expressed themselves out. Okay, Deborah says he's a good man, caring. Okay, talking about Bernie Sanders. All right, so thank you guys for tuning in today. For those that follow the channel and watch on a regular basis and really want to see the channel grow, if you don't mind, this is streaming two ways. It's streaming on the cell phones, right? It also streams horizontally on laptops. Most people view the show on their cell phone. So when you close this out, if you could go and hit a like on the horizontal, the second stream that's going simultaneously, it just helps the horizontal grow. So most people prefer to watch this show on their cell phones. Lori Park says, boycott all holiday spending. That's the new trend. I think they said they're going to boycott Thanksgiving, Veterans Day, Christmas, and Black Friday. I did hear that. Brian Cantrell says, Bordeaux and Mel, God bless you both. Okay. One Love says between Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, it's 91 years in politics. That's a lot of years, right? Damn Entertainment, thank you for subscribing to the channel. I really do appreciate it. So here's a couple of things that are going to be coming down the pipeline. I'm going to be giving back a lot financially for the holidays. So I'm going to be looking out for some people in need. So I'm trying to put all that together. So look out for that. Not sure how it's going to come into play, but I will be doing that to help those in need. Especially a lot of people took a hit from what happened recently with the government. Also, for those that want to really get into the Bible and Bible scholarship, as you guys know, that's what I usually do in my spare time, is all things Bible scholarship. So that will go on Patreon because I don't want to mix up both channels. It starts to get too messy, especially with the algorithm. So if you do have a passion for, like today in the comments, it came up this whole discussion about slavery in the Bible. The Bible also deals with grape, right? So you know the word that I'm trying to say, the violation of individuals, especially when we think of the word, we think about women, right? The Bible actually deals with that as well. A lot of people don't realize it, but Deuteronomy gives you the breakdown. A lot of it, you have to understand the Hebrew language to a certain extent, but all those type of subjects, especially when it comes to the gospels, and if you really take all of the gospels and you put them side by side, you'll see that the Bible writers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, number one, in the Greek scriptures, it says written according to Mark, according to Matthew. These names were not their real names. The books were written anonymously. If you compare different stories that they're telling, in many cases, the facts are different, right? So these are the type of things that we get into. I have some very good Bible scholars that I've been working with for years that's going to be coming on to break it down. Now, these are modern Bible scholars who this is what they pretty much spent their entire life work is breaking down these concepts. Now, why do we do this? We do this to try to help people understand because a lot of times when you go to church or when you go to your kingdom hall or whatever it may be, a lot of people are just reading the Bible at surface level value. Or if you ask people questions, they'll quote something their grandmother told them or something the pastor said, right? When you get into the Bible scholarship, you start to understand people, places, and things. Now, as a part of my walk, I've been to Italy where going to the Colosseum and seeing all of these things, I spent a lot of time in Rome trying to understand. I went to the um, Vatican and all these different places. One of the things that I learned at the Vatican is that the Roman, right, Rome, their government system pretty much evolved into the Catholic Church. And they did this by means of Peter and Paul, right? So Peter and Paul evolved into the Catholic Church. Now, what most people don't understand is that when Jesus, right, for those that do believe that Jesus walked the earth, when he died, James, Peter kind of took over the work. James was his actual brother, and they were called the way people. So then Paul comes along and he starts Christianity. Most people don't understand that. At face value, the Apostle Paul says that there were people being called Christians in Antioch as a like a slur, like when people say the N word, they were being referred to as Christians. But Paul was the individual that helped set up the churches, and Jesus, right? If you go into the Gospels, and I can show you the text, Jesus says, "Do not call anyone rabbi, do not call anyone your instructor," right? Paul set up churches, and individuals became bishops under hierarchy, right? Which is quite different than what we read in the Gospel. So these are the type of subject matter that we're going to get into under the Patreon. So I just want to introduce those. Not everybody wants to get into this. One of the reason why I'm doing this is because you have ancient Israel, right? Then you have Hebrew Israelites today claiming that they're Israel, and these are usually black individuals, right? They say that they're the original Israel based on the Bible. So I get extensively into Israel, but also because of the way the Bible is written, you have from Genesis to Malachi, you have the Hebrew scriptures, right? Well, from Matthew to Revelation, you have the Greek scriptures, although Jesus spoke Aramaic, right? For those that believe that he truly existed, it's all written in high level Greek when the Bible says that these men were lowly and unlettered, not too smart. Okay. So these are some of the concepts we're going to kind of break down. I'm having these Bible scholars come on. I know not everyone wants to hear about it, but for those who want to, it's going to be available to you, but it won't be here. We're going to keep the news going here. And thank you guys so much. Let me see a few comments before I check out here. Def says, Jesus walk with me. Okay, with me. Okay. Slammy Dog says, and what do you think I Show Speed is doing to American kids being the Muslim concert? Okay, I'm not too familiar with that. I've recently learned about I Show Speed. One Love says 360 degrees is a circle, 8 is infinity. Okay, 3 is 9 is for life. Okay. Lori Park says, I have a question. So why do these Christian nationalists believe that Jesus Christ was white? Okay, if you go to the book of Revelation, it describes Jesus. It describes Jesus. Now, many people feel like Revelation is figurative. It describes him as having hair as wool, and also his skin would have been as bronze, right? And if you go back in history, Jesus would have came from an area where there was no white people, okay? So he could not have been a white guy. But in setting up the Catholic Church, and it would take you a tour to go through the Vatican just as I did and see how the history came together. But as let me give you an example of myself as a black guy growing up in a Baptist. Originally, we started off Baptist. When you see the white Jesus on the wall, it does something to your mind, right? Now you start to view God as white. So this is all by design. When you go to the tour, especially in Rome, you'll get to see, especially like with David, and also you'll see who actually they painted in order to get this persona of Jesus, right? It'll really blow your mind, but it's all by design because the way a person see their God, it's so powerful. In fact, religion is the lens through which most people see their God. So here's my point. If you are a Muslim, right, you're not going to eat pork. You're going to see your God through that lens, and you won't be able to eat pork because your God is watching you, right? If you grew up in a Christian household, you might see Jesus as being your God, right? But then again, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, you'll see Jesus as God's son. So even within the same religion, there's so many different variations according to how people are understanding the Bible, right? I didn't mean to get so deeply into this today, but you guys, I wanted to let you know if this is what you want to do or understand. Like I have Robert Price. He is a Bible scholar. I think he's magnificent. I've done quite a few shows with him. He'll be coming on as well as a lot more, tapping into Bart Ehrman and so many others. Okay, so let's see here. Is there anybody else with any more questions? And let me make sure I did answer your question. So just to make sure we're clear, um, I gave you a little bit of history about how that came through the Catholic Church as far as Jesus being a white individual. And I could show you that. One of the things that blew my mind when I went to the Vatican, they had all these army soldiers outside, and this is in Rome. And one of the reasons why they explained to me, I actually have a live, I may repost it because I filmed it all. But the reason why they have so much security around the Vatican is because they have Muhammad went to hell, right? So a lot of the big figures from other religions, they have in the paintings, they have them actually burning in hell. And so that's why they have, so there's just so much you pick up. As a part of my Bible scholarship program, my next trip is coming up. It's going to be in Greece. So, because basically, I don't know if you guys, I'm going to be doing a tour in 3 weeks of the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. But when you go to the museum, you'll see that um, the concepts of God, the demons, the devil, these concepts stem from Egypt, right? And they show you by means of the language how the Greeks came in and often they decimated the place, right? And then they would walk away and they would take so many different ideas from the Egyptians. And so the Egyptians would use the figurines or the pictures to as word and language. And as the Greeks would come in, when you go to the museum, they show you like 1,000 years later, the Greeks they're using the same pictures on bowls, but they don't realize that it's actually language. They just think it's decoration, right? But then in years to come, you see how the Greeks, they create this whole pantheon of gods. You have Zeus, and the list goes on and on. So then when you see Rome, when they get involved with Greece, then you start to see the more modern religions develop. And that's why you have the Greek scriptures from Matthew to Revelation. They're written in Greek, right? Because the Greeks are the ones who brought over the sophisticated religions and how God is in the sky and not just the sun, or God is not just a tree, right? So these are the type of things that we try to investigate now. It's not just a matter of ideas, because sometimes people just teach ideas, right? Like I was having someone over the weekend understand the Apostle Paul tells you that Paul teaches different than Jesus. Most people do not quite understand that concept, right? It's not a bad thing. Paul is teaching different than Jesus, but because the way the Roman Catholic Church put the Bible together, they're the ones that put the Bible together. They have it laid out with you have Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, then you get to Acts, right? Then you get into the writings of Paul, but because they're right there side by side, you don't realize that Paul is teaching for the Gentiles or non-Jews to be able to convert and to become Christians. When Jesus was on earth, if you read the Bible carefully, especially if you put the gospel side by side, you'll start to realize Jesus says, I've only come for those of Israel. Remember in Mark chapter 7, when the Syro-Phoenician woman, she comes to Jesus and she says to her, and I didn't mean to go here today, but we're here. She says, my daughter is possessed with a demon. Jesus, in essence, says, listen, you know, he calls her in a roundabout way, compares her to a dog because he says, I've only come for the Israel, right? He's only come for Israel. But the lady says to Jesus, he says, oh, but, you know, we'll enjoy the crumbs that fall from the table. Basically, that's what she's painting the picture. And Jesus is amazed by her attitude, right? And so therefore, he told her to go in peace, and the demon was removed from her daughter. Okay. But when Jesus dies and he resurrects, that's when he opens it up. In Matthew chapter 24, he says, go there and preach the good news to the entire earth, right? So it's after his death that you get that verbiage. So, but we could get into that as well. Paul, though, Paul's teachings is that the Gentiles can serve God. So he opens it up for all the Roman Empire, because I didn't realize until I actually went to Rome that the Roman Empire was so vast. So Paul is the one that's opening up the ministry and pushing it in the direction so where people don't have to be Torah observant or eating non-pork, and circumcision came up as a big deal. But remember, Paul had a big discrepancy with James and John, the way people or Christ's brothers, because Paul was teaching something different. But you really have to pay attention. So when it comes to like the congregation of Laodicea, they said that Paul said that he was rejected there. So if you go to Revelation chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, Jesus says he recognized that there were some apostles that were rejected, and he called them false apostles. But anyway, that's a little deep for some people. We're going to keep it the way it is. But I say all that to say the modern Israel that we hear about today, that everybody's asking questions about, when you really tie it to the ancient Israelites, the question comes up, are they the same people? And you'd be shocked to find out that more than likely they are not. So at any rate, thank you guys for tuning into the channel. I didn't mean to go so deeply into that subject, but those are the type of subjects that we're going to have Bible scholars talking about on the Patreon, which is going to be basically free, but it separates it from this channel. Thank you guys so much. I just want to check one more time and see if there's any last minute questions before I go off, because I do have time today. Okay, Lori Park says, I have learned something today. Thank you, Lori. That means a lot to me to hear that. Brian Cantrell says, the Samaritan woman. Now, if you guys keep bringing up subjects, I'm going to keep going on. So for those who don't want to really hear this on the channel, it's because I'm responding to the question. But anyway, Brian is taking me back there. Brian says, the Samaritan woman pulling from the well. You're talking about John chapter 6. Okay, John 6. For a drink of water, she exclaimed, I am a Samaritan. Jesus does not care who you are. He came to save the lost, not the righteous. Example, Matthew, first gospel. Okay, great expression. I can agree with that. I could actually go there, but that's a little bit too deep probably for this time. One Love says, so many books are missing. You cannot get the full concept of the message. Jesus had a grandfather. So let me talk about that. I spoke with my aunt earlier today as I was driving up, and I was explaining to her, she grew up as a Baptist, my family for the most part. She didn't realize that there's a book of Mary, there's a book of Barnabas, there's a book of Judas the Iscariot, right? There's so many books. But again, the Roman Catholic Church made the determination of what books landed in your Bible. Okay. So it's the Roman Catholic Church that was behind it. And so the Roman Catholic Church had their agenda, right? A lot of it was political. And like I said, when I went to Italy, they show you when you take the tour how Rome, their government, the empire became the Catholic Church. There's no doubt about it. I was floored. That's one of the things that really stopped me in my tracks when I went to Italy, and I learned this inside the Vatican. I think it's on one of my lives because I was live. So everything that I'm telling you, I could go back and pull it up. I'm only going back to my live because as I was walking through, like when I go to Greece, I'm going to be live and showing you guys what's being said and how most of the religions came from Greece by way of Egypt, right? It doesn't take a lot of research. And before Egypt, right, um, the Zoroastrianism, if you look up, you see the Mazda car, that's a god in Iran. And most of these concepts that you find in the Hebrew scriptures from Genesis to Malachi, they stem from that religion. So all of the animal sacrifices, magic, miracles, all of these concepts, they stem from Iran. And to this day, that religion exists, but Israel adapted from them as well. So I know it's very complicated. So the next time you see a Mazda car, you know that that's a god, and that God is what struck a lot of the concepts that you're actually learning. Now, I grew up my entire life in religion, but I did not know half of what I know now because I was just basically attending and not paying attention. My whole life was shaped by it, but now I actually understand the concepts and how it all comes together. Because for the most part, if you think about it, most people just know. Let me give you this example. When it comes to Christianity, a lot of people feel like when you die, you go to heaven. Other people feel like when you die, you're gonna just go to your grave. Ecclesiastes, Solomon says, the dead are conscious of nothing, right? So you're just gone. This is what the Bible says, right? Okay, in Matthew, Jesus says, "Do not marvel at this. The hour is coming when all of those in their graves will hear his voice and come out." So that gives you an indication that people are not coming back from heaven. They're resting in their grave, consistent to what Ecclesiastes is saying. And when Jesus returns, they're going to hear his voice and come out of their graves. So, why is the pastor teaching that people go to heaven when they die? Another way of looking at it is the Apostle Paul, if you really want to look at it, when you go to the book of Matthew, let's say the Gospels, Jesus tells his disciples, right? In Mark chapter 9, go check it out. Write this down. Mark chapter 9, he says, "There are some standing here that will not taste death until they what? Until the Son of Man comes." So that means that he would have came during their lifetime. Okay. Another time, Jesus says, "You will not finish the circuit of your preaching, right? Until the Son of Man comes." So Jesus is talking to individuals that are living during that time, and he's telling them, "I'm going to be back in your lifetime," right? So imagine if you're in a tough spot and Jesus is standing before you. You're one of the crowd members. Start at Mark chapter 9, right before the transfiguration. And Jesus, and let's say you're struggling with cancer. We know cancer was in Egypt, so people had cancer for eternity so far, right? Jesus saying, "Listen, do not worry. I'm coming back." Okay, so this is something you could look up, right? And these people were expecting him to come in their lifetime. In Second Thessalonians, the Apostle Paul also thought that Jesus was coming during his lifetime. When he talks about the rapture, right? He talks about getting caught up in the air when Jesus arrives. In Acts chapter 7, Jesus talks about he's going to be coming back the same way he left. And we know the way he left is as if he ascended into the heavens, right? So most people, they're just not really peering into the Bible and trying to understand, even though, like, for instance, my mother died because she didn't take a blood transfusion because we were Jehovah's Witnesses, right? We didn't know any better. Now the Jehovah's Witnesses have changed their stance. Had my mother been going through cancer now, perhaps she'd live, right? Now it's more of a conscious matter and so forth. So it's very important to be able to understand. Most people cannot articulate. I debate a lot of pastors. I debate just about anybody, a lot of Hebrew Israelites or what have you, about these concepts, because this is just my passion. I'm just giving you guys a little bit of insight into what I do. So hopefully, though, I answered your question. I didn't mean to go on a tangent. John Stevenson says, I cannot respect any religion that thinks it's okay to kill people who have a different religion or belief. Yeah, but these people are getting it from, especially when it comes to Islam, they're getting it. They're just not picking this up from anywhere. They're getting these concepts from a place, and it's from what they're reading that's in the Quran, right? So that's a whole different. That's a whole different concept. And then I'm pretty sure you've heard of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Islam came after Jesus. Obviously, it's written after the Greek scriptures. That's a whole different. But they're being influenced by the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then there's a whole, what most people don't understand. You have the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. These are anonymous writers. No one knows who actually wrote the books, but we do know that they were written by highly intelligent Greek speaking and also people that understood Hebrew. And that's why when you go to Rome, this is my last point, then I'll go. When you go to Rome, you start to understand that the Jews were living in Rome. They're spread throughout everywhere, right? There's no doubt about it. But the Jews were the only individuals that gave Rome a run for their money. And what was it that influenced the Jews? It was their Torah, right? So if you go and you really understand what was happening around 47 AD, and then you understand how in 70 AD, how the temple was destroyed between 67 to 70 AD, you start to understand how Rome played a key part in trying to commandeer the Israel religion. And so a lot of these writings that you get in the Gospels are an answer to what's written in the Hebrew scriptures. If you don't believe me, I can show you in Psalms where there's writings about David. Psalm chapter 1, you could go there. And if you read it, pay attention. If you go to Jesus' crucifixion, these points about David, they actually write it into Jesus' life. So you have to be able, the key part is most people don't understand. They just hear concepts, but they're not putting together the Hebrew and the script and the Greek scriptures. A lot of what's written in the Greek scriptures are about other individuals, but these writers at a high level are trying to fulfill prophecy from the Jews because they're tired of, they're tired of the Jews, just like we see today, giving them a hard time, warring with them, not listening. They're hard to keep within the Roman Empire. So they came up with a way to give them a new religion. They were trying to get the Jews by means of the Gospels and the other writings of Paul. They were trying to get them to convert to Christianity because, see, now they wouldn't be adhering to no pork eating, circumcision, a lot of their stringent rules. If they converted to Christianity, they would no longer have to worry about it. And now, not only that, when they convert to Christianity, all of the regular, what they call technically pagans, right? Or Goyim people, the Gentiles, now Christians and Jews come under one umbrella under the Roman Empire, the Hebrews, which are the Jews, and the Christians. And now Rome can keep them all in one umbrella, right? Now, as time go on, Constantine, I could really get into all that and how Constantine played a big part. But the issue too, if you go back to I won't get too, it gets too deep. So we're going to keep it light. As you can see, this is what I do every day. So I'm going to stay away from that for now. Okay, let's see. One Love says Jew only means to follow Judaism. Correct. You're absolutely right about that. One Love says John was added after the fact. Okay, John was the last book written. I understand what you're saying by John was written after the fact. So, you see, you're taking me to one last point. I'll try to stay here. Okay, so I want you guys to stick with me here. The first book of the Gospels written was Mark, right? Then Matthew, then Luke, then John. Okay, and most Bible scholars, and this is according to Bible scholars, right? If you go to Mark, it opens up with Jesus' baptism, right? If you go to Matthew, whoever's right now, Matthew is written next. Now you get the birth of Jesus, right? Luke is pretty similar, but whoever wrote John after the Greek influence, now they're saying that they take Jesus all the way back to being the Word in the beginning with God and was a God. So you see how Mark is written first. Jesus is a grown man, is at his baptism. In fact, if you go to each book, here's one last thing. You go to each book for those that are still here, and you read the baptism story, you'll see in Mark, the first book that's written, Jesus is the only one hearing the voice of God that's anointing him with the dove coming down in the spirit. But as the books are written, Matthew, Luke, you'll see that now the crowd, it's written in that the crowd is actually hearing the voice of God too. So just pay attention to those little points. So that these are the type of things that the Bible scholars, just for those that want to hear and understand that history, the Bible, and kind of putting it all together just for some understanding. And it's quite a intriguing process for those who are interested. But as you can see, I get passionate about this subject. But at any rate, to answer your question, John was written last of the Gospels, and from Mark, Jesus is grown. Matthew, the writer, is expounding. He takes Jesus back to being born, right? So now you get the whole birth narrative. A part of that narrative comes from Egypt. I could show you where that storyline, some of the storyline was taken from Egypt. You could actually see that if you go to the Metropolitan Museum, where that story, the birth narrative, was taken from exactly, or it was influenced by. And then Luke, right? Luke gives you a different. Matthew and Luke give you two different birth narratives. Most people don't understand. It's kind of like in Genesis, chapter 1 and chapter 2 give you two different creation tracks. Go and read it. I'm not just talking for my health people. This is what I do every day. So Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2 are two different stories that are being put together. So do yourself, if you're interested, just go read Genesis chapter 1 and chapter 2. But anyway, getting back to Matthew, Mark starts off with Jesus, a grown man. Matthew, right? Matthew starts with his birth. Luke is similar, but it's different. Luke and Matthew do not jive. And then John takes Jesus all the way back to being a God. He's a word. In the beginning was the word, and the word was God, and the word was a God. The Jehovah Witnesses have it as a lowercase a God. But at any rate, that's it for that. So thank you guys for tuning in today. I didn't mean to get into this whole breakdown involving the Bible and all that. But just so you know, let's see. Brian Cantrell says, Mel, thank you for the ending message. Religion is amazing. Yes, indeed. It's very amazing. In fact, like I said, a religion is the lens through which man see their God, right? So it's very important. If you want to really get to know someone, it's helpful to understand their religion. Is probably early on in the process as you can, because then you're going to kind of know a certain angle of what or how they see things, whether it agrees with your philosophy or not. All right, so okay, that's it. I think that's it. Okay, one love you, Mel. Thank you. I appreciate that. Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you guys that all yeah, Genesis was not the first book. That's another again, because of the way the Bible is laid out, you think it's the first book, but actually the book of Job. So, but that's a whole different, we could go down that whole journey as well. I think that's it for now. Let's see. Witnesses don't know about Enoch. Exactly. Enoch is not in the picture. People are starting to get more familiar with Enoch, but although mentioned in the Bible, the book is not really accepted. Okay. All right. Deborah says, thank you. Yeah, I don't get this talkative, but you guys got me stirred up today. So at any rate, thank you so much. Any of these things that I've said, I could really have a different discussion with you if you don't agree or if you want to learn more about it. But I don't have any type of specific teachings or what have you, but I do prescribe for Bible scholarship because I spent my whole life in it. So there's nothing wrong in wanting to know and understand. So I invite you guys to come along with me to Greece. It's going to be an amazing trip. I'll definitely be, just like I walk the streets of New York City, I'll be showing Greece or what have you. And also, I'll be going to Egypt. So that's my whole journey and this whole Bible understanding. But Rome, I'm telling you, Rome was the top of the line. And I'm so grateful that I went because I understand. You know what else I learned? And you're not going to believe this. The first slave boats that left out in order to be sent down to South America, the very first boat, they had to get the approval of the Pope. When they told me that, I almost passed out in the Vatican. I said, you mean to tell me that the Catholic Church was behind slavery too? And then I also learned that King James, right? This Bible here. And I'll talk about this next time. The reason why you have a King James Bible is because he didn't want to have the Roman Catholic Church capitalizing on all the money. And so I don't want to get into that right now. So at any rate, and what started me on the journey is I says, well, if you really want to know about anything, follow the money. And the money led me back to the Catholic Church, and voila. Thank you guys. Not trying to offend anybody, but you guys asked questions. I answered. I'm just being honest. And I do know when it comes to religion, everybody is sensitive. I spent my whole life in religion, so I get that. It's not about making someone feel bad about their faith. Everybody's entitled to their faith. Jesus taught, and here I am going into another sermon. Jesus taught that you had to follow the word of God in order to achieve life. Paul taught that all you had to do really, and that's why if you go to a Baptist church or some of these non-denominational, they say all you got to do is accept Jesus and you're good. And remember the pastor that was arrested he eventually died, but he was abusing kids or what have you. He stood up in front of the church and he says, because, Paul talks about when he tried to do right, how sin was the reason why he was doing these things. And the pastor stood up and he thought he could do that same thing. It didn't go well for him to say, well, I meant to follow God's word, the Bible, but it was the sin in me. He kind of used Paul's direct words. It was the sin in me that made me do this to these children. And ultimately, you see why people can, and which I always had a hard time understanding why people would be so religious, but then they go do all these terrible things. And a lot of them, they don't understand. They're more leaning toward what Paul was saying in the forgiveness than Jesus saying you also need to follow the Bible and what's being said. So because you have the way people, which most people are not even understanding it, but go research the way people. The Bible mentions the way people. And Paul, right? When Paul had Jesus' disciples and his apostles, according to the Bible, they walked beside Jesus, right? They walked beside him. They could tell you if you had a little swag, what these experiences were according to the Bible. The Apostle Paul, who later basically is the starter of Christianity, I could debate if anybody want to go there, we can go. But Paul is the one along with Peter. And when you go to Rome, you'll see they have the statues of Paul and Peter. I have it on my lives. They're about 2 years ago. But they're there. And they're there for a reason, because they tell you that these are the fathers of the religion. But Paul, on the road to Damascus, Jesus comes to him, he sees a light. And instead of like the apostles who are walking with Jesus, Paul has a spiritual experience. And then he goes off for a while. When he starts his ministry, he goes to Jerusalem with James. And you know what Paul says? He says, I met with James, the brother of Jesus, and I profited nothing from that. They're not the same religion. James and Peter are part of the way people, and they're Jews. When Jesus left this earth, he was not a Christian, he was a Jew. And his followers, the way people, continued the walk of Jewishness. Okay? Paul comes along and he writes the theology that you find. And I would debate anybody, when you separate these books, right, the Gospels from the writings of Paul, and you embrace it with an open mind and an open heart, you'll start to see what I'm saying is actually true. That's why Paul is saying it's okay. You don't have to get circumcised, right? When Jesus would have been circumcised, right? The Bible talks about that. Jesus was a Jew. He died a Jew. Christianity came about afterward by means of the Apostle Paul. Most people, I spent my whole life in religion, I didn't pick up on it. And Paul is opening the way for non-Christians or non-Jews to be able to walk with Christ. And guess what? They no longer have to follow the law of the Torah. And guess who benefits? It's the Roman Empire, who became the Catholic Church. And I end on that note. Thank you, guys. I'm sorry for going there. Hey, it's a part of what I am. Thank you, guys.
Different voices, but the same song. Loving a world where we all belong. Kindness leading the way, breaking the chains. In the symphony of love, the thing remains. Embracing diversity, brighter days in sight. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. Colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might. Watching the world sharing love and light. Hearts beating as one in our peaceful flight. The colors of harmony, painting the night. United we stand in love's pure might.